Okay, some of y'all are about to be real mad at me, but I think it must be said because I've been seeing something. As a reader, a very avid reader who. Let me just preface this by saying that I personally am not a performative reader. I prefer to do that shit alone where no one can see me or comment on the books that I read. And then sometimes when I do happen to read in public, I am wary of the books that I bring out because I don't want somebody to get the impression that I am like an incel. Sometimes I do like those incel books. I'm not, I don't do it for the fashion, I don't do it for the aesthetic. I'm a reader, I'm a writer, I'm a poet, but I will also get into how I had those doors open for me because it does kind of tie into being a little bit performative. But hear me out. Hear me out. So I've been seeing, like, on the internet that there is definitely a rise in making reading an aesthetic, making it something cool, a fashion. You know, you see somebody reading Joan Didion on the bus in New York and you're like, oh, they look cool as hell. Even though I don't like Joan Didion. Me personally, I do not like Joan Didion. I've tried with her, but this is not the Joan Didion video. That's for another day. Then there are people on the opposite side who are readers, who are natural readers, who have a very strong opinion about this trend that's happening. This, like, writer core, poet core. I don't really know too much about, like, that. I, if anything, I just think on the surface level it's kind of funny that people are using that as, like, it's becoming a real thing. It's becoming a very strong trend. Like, I saw a Target ad the other day about somebody being like, I want to make my room poet this. And then there's, like, those advertisements of Coach being, like, those little books you clip onto your bag. I'm editing here, and I just wanted to say this as well. I am not unaware of the fact that that's quite irritating. Like, corporations and companies doing that, specifically targeting the arts in order for their own gain. That's not okay. But we can have both things in both hands. We can hold both things in our hands. Can we not? Honestly, this might be a little bit of a controversial take. For the most part, I do not see a problem with performative reading or performative intellectualism. I think that it's just funny, and I think that we should spread the word. I feel like, what is the harm in pretending to read in public? Because already we don't really know who's doing it for real, who's doing it for fake. I see it as, like, at least they're trying. And the things that we're seeing, especially if you're online or even, I don't know, watching TV and there's those advertisements, I feel like these things in a culmination is making reading more palatable, making people more curious to sitting down and reading a damn book. I think it's making books more palatable to younger generations, even if it starts off a little bit fake. Example. Okay. So I love poetry. I think you guys already know what I'm gonna say. Please don't exit out of this video. I'm begging all two people who are watching. When I was a little kid, 13, let's just say, I was not reading poetry at all. I was not a poet. I Yet, like everybody back in the day, I saw those little rupee core. Yeah, 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 you know. If you know, you know. The rupee core Instagram type poetry. And her book, Milk and Honey, that was the first poetry book I've ever read, like cover to cover. And at the time, I genuinely really enjoyed it. I liked the Instagram poetry. I did do it in a way to seem cool and deep. I posted it. I posted it on my Instagram. I did. Yeah. And I'm not saying that there's not much value in Rupi Kaur's poetry, Rupi Kaur adjacent poetry. Now that I'm a little bit more literate, I guess we could say, I understand the implicate like a little bit damaging implications of spreading that around because it's almost dumbed down poetry. It's very simple. Beautiful words, yes. Yet it's not Maya Angelou, it's not Frank O'Hara. These are just people that I personally like. And maybe I am acting a little holier than thou, yes. So let's go back. Reading Rupi Kaur's poetry opened a door for me. It really did. And then I was obsessed with reading all kinds of poetry. T.S. Eliot, Charles Bukowski. It really did open my world. And then suddenly I'm like the poetry spokesperson at Barnes & Noble when I worked there. I claimed that shelf and I was giving all sorts of recommendations. And then now all of a sudden I am a poet. I'm a poet and I love poetry and it is a big part of my life. It's not who I am as a person. I don't tie my blood and my bones into poetry and books, although I am very obsessed with it. And as a writer, I read a lot because for inspiration and curiosity and just it's always going to be in my life. To me it's like food. It really is. And sometimes I think, dang, without that wanting to seem deep at a young age, without that curiosity, I probably would have explored poetry much later in life. I know it was always meant to come to me, yet it would be a lot later, and I don't think I would be as motivated to write my own and explore other authors. So when I see this now with books, novels, it's like I see it as, okay, maybe they're not fully grasping the actual plot, maybe not. Yet they have to, like, there has to be something. I think it's very hard to turn reading into a genuine surface level fashion because if you are at least trying to scan the page, something went through your head. At least I hope something went through those people's heads and maybe they grasped it a little bit and then they were like, oh, I read this cool book, and then somebody else reads it and they, like, it goes to their heart. You just never know how people are going to react to certain stories and how it's going to affect them. So maybe it starts off as somebody's fake reading and then somebody else sees that and then they end up being really obsessed with that author and then they can get a grasp on it. Because the people who get it, I trust that everybody's smart enough to get it. The ones who will get it will get it. I don't see why we're so worried about the posers, because there's always going to be posers in every media, every single medium of media content that we have. And books, I think it's, honestly, I don't see it as that big of a deal that books are being turned into something that's cool, because somebody out there is going to appreciate the depth or the story, the characters, and maybe what it took was seeing it on Instagram, if they are very much online. And a lot of people are very much online right now. So it's almost like a little bit of a contradiction, I would say. It's not like you have to be online to be curious about books and reading and every kind of author. If you are, though, and you happen to stumble across it, I say let the people be curious. Let them at least try to explore it without the real readers coming in saying, you just don't understand it. You're just reading it to look cool. I don't get that. I don't get the judgmental aspect of it. For the most part, and I say for the most part because I will add, I do see the other side of the argument, and I will say so. But for the most part, I don't see it as too much of an issue, because I know that, especially now in the times that we're in, people are discerning. I would at least hope that they're discerning and they do have their own judgments and opinions on things and don't just like it because a mass amount of people like it. That's how it's always been, I feel like. It's just a lot more heightened right now because we are subjected to taking in so many things at once and we are very easily influenced. I do hope, though, and I trust that they know what's in their hearts. Like, they know what they like and what they don't like. And so be it if they see someone famous reading Joan Didion and they decide to do that and read her. Fine, whatever. Sorry, this is not, I don't want it to be my Joan Didion rant. The other side of the argument, which I do see, and it makes me a little, is taking an important book, something that has something of substance to say, something that is very cherished in the literature world, and turning it into something superficial, kind of diminishing the substance of a book just to look cool. There is that. Being like, oh yeah, I've heard of that, but do you know it? You know that quote in The Secret History? I think the professor was like, it's better to know one book intimately than like 1,000 on the surface level. It kind of comes down to that, where maybe there is an aspect of performative reading where we're taking in books like TikToks where we only really see the surface of it, and that's troubling. I do feel like sometimes it takes starting off as at the surface to go deeper if you want to go deeper. We can't tell people to look at things deeper. We can't force them to do that. And if it takes somebody beginning, let them begin. Let them begin even if they just want to look deep or look smart. Let them begin. And I don't think that we should gatekeep great literature for people who only understand it. Because how are you supposed to know if you understand it if you're not curious about it, if you don't try? I think it's, honestly, I don't want to be too naive about it, and I'm trying to use my words very carefully here. I think it's kind of interesting how reading is becoming a fashion. For once, like, how good for future authors, aspiring writers, people who want to expand their minds a little bit more. What's so wrong with being a little analog for the aesthetic? Or it's not like they're hurting anybody, you know? It's not physically harmful. It shouldn't be a threat to those who feel confident in their own reading abilities and their own literacy. If you see a problem with this argument, please tell me. Or if you agree, tell me. Or just don't. You don't have to tell me anything. You don't owe me anything. But I appreciate if you watched, and I'm sorry if you like Joan Didion. I was being a little bit slanderous towards her. That's on me. I just have a lot to say about her books. My apologies. And if I come off as a little bit silly and bimbo-esque, I'm not going to apologize for that. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'm going to continue dog sitting and reading, which I was doing before I decided to film this video. Yeah, have a good rest of your day. Thank you for watching.